This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing News. Delighted to be joined by the former WBO Cruiserweight Champion of the World. Sorry, I did have to get it in there. Chris Billam-Smith. We are just over a week removed from your bout with Gilberto Ramirez out in Saudi Arabia. First and foremost, Chris, how you doing?
Yeah, it's hard to hear that. First time I think anyone's referred to me as former, like to my face. So yeah, it's tough to take, but it's the realization.
Yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, of course, you are the former champion after your brilliant fight with Zurdo Ramirez that unfortunately didn't go your way out in Saudi Arabia. First and foremost, how you doing? How you looking? You're in slightly better shape than we last saw you, as leaving you on that Sunday in Riyadh. Look to be on the way to healing, but still wearing some of the war wounds, I suppose.
Yeah, still a bit bruised. I think these dissolvable stitches are meant to just dissolve themselves. Or maybe I've got to take them out, but I tried to take them out the other day and it was a bit too soon. It was pulling at my skin, but yeah, no, healing up well, and yeah, almost ready to get back in the gym, to be honest.
As I'm sure you are. But before we get on to that, let's revisit that fight a week and a half ago or so, out in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Fantastic fight between yourself and Gilberto Ramirez for the WBA and WBO Cruiserweight titles. I guess first and foremost, your kind of reflection on the fight now. It's been a week or so.
Yeah, obviously a brutal fight. Started well first round, and then he kind of just managed to get a little foothold in the fight in rounds 2 and 3. It still felt alright in rounds 2 and 3, like was it in the rounds, but yeah, and then yeah, just middle rounds kind of took over, and it was hard to stamp my authority. I thought I'd do enough damage, but I knew I could catch him, and I caught him plenty and to head and body, but not as much as I would like to a body. He was very clever in there on his hand defences, and it's hard to hit clean to the body. And then to the head, I thought, anyone I hit with those shots, even in 18-ounce gloves and a head guard, I've been getting a reaction from. And he just wasn't really reacting. He was just firing back, and supremely tough. So I guess in that sense, I underestimated his toughness. And he was superb. He was a really, really good fighter. And it's always hard to take a loss, but I feel like I learnt a hell of a lot in that fight. More so than I have done in any other fight in my career.
First round seemed to be going so well. You came out, it looked like you were able to impose your physicality. It looked like you might have got a reaction in that first round, kind of backed Zurdo up. What was going through your mind at the end of the first round?
Yeah, I felt comfortable. I thought, okay, this is good. I felt responsive in my feet and reactions, and felt sharp. And yeah, thought, yeah, this is a great start. This is what we wanted, because we didn't want to let him. He can get into a rhythm, which he ended up doing in the fight, but I didn't want to let him get into a rhythm. So I thought, okay, yeah, this is almost the perfect start, other than knocking him down or knocking him out. It's, if you're going to see the end of round 1, it was a really solid start. So yeah, felt good then.
You mentioned there, I know you mentioned before the fight as well that you rated him highly as a fighter. He certainly wasn't somebody that you were going in there and overlooking. You mentioned there about his hand defences and being tougher than potentially you expected him to be, particularly moving up through the weights as he has done. What else did you make of him as a fighter? What did he do well in the ring? Were there any things that surprised you?
No, nothing surprised me other than his toughness, to be honest, and his, I guess, his fitness, toughness and fitness, because they come hand in hand. Sometimes you can hit people with that many shots and they really start to tire, but he was just able to keep pushing punches out and putting his shots together. Didn't lose his shape at all. Like, really, really good at keeping his shape, which I knew he was, but I thought as the fight went on and I wore him down that he'd lose that a lot more than he did. But yeah, no, he's a fantastic fighter, and as tough as it is to take, it's an honour to share the ring with him, and plenty to learn, and with time, hopefully we can get it on again, and I can undo the mistakes that I made and make up for it and beat him, which I believe right now that I could go back in there with another full camp and make the adjustments, and but it's easy to say now, and it's too late now.
You're obviously, typically magnanimous and respectful in defeat. We're very careful not to make any excuses, and gave all the credit to the better man in Gilberto Ramirez on the night. But there was a pretty nasty cut, which turned into 2 cuts on the night, and you also had some damage to your rib in the 7th round with a body shot that caught you just round the back. How tough was it in there, and particularly with the cut? I mean, explain it to people who'll be watching this, who have never been cut in a high level prize fight, just how difficult it is to manage that throughout the fight.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first time a cut's properly affected me in terms of I lost vision in my eye probably as in it was blurry, not lost vision. So I couldn't really see because it was either closed or blood was in it for probably 3 or 4 of the rounds. I was probably unable to see for like a minute to 2 minutes of those rounds. So you're looking at like 6 to 8 minutes of the fight or whatever. There I was like kind of a bit unable to see out that eye. It was quite hard. Obviously my left eye as well, and he's always moving around to his right as a southpaw. So yeah, but it's not an excuse, it's part of it. I wasn't sure at the time if it was a head clash or a punch, because everything just happened so fast in there. And then after the 4th round, the inspector had a look at it and said he's on borrowed time or something along those lines, and I was like, I've got to get going now, like, because it could have been a punch. But I found out later on, I think I even found out later on in the fight that it was, or it might have been after the fight, I can't remember now, that it was a clash of heads. So I wouldn't have needed to panic as much, obviously win rounds and stuff, but at the time I was thinking I need to get rid of him in case it's a punch, because I wasn't sure. But yeah, I got told on the night it was that. But yeah, look, it's part of the job. He could have been cut. I was the one who's cut. I've been cut before. It's not an excuse. You have to, if you're going to win a unified world title, you have to go through those things sometimes, and it's never an excuse, whether you're ill or you've got an injury or anything. When that bell goes, or for any of the rounds, you've got to be absolutely ready to give everything and figure out a way to win. And I was unable to do that with any injuries or anything. You have to find a way to win regardless, and I gave all I could on the night. And people said things like, oh yeah, but how has he done that with a broken hand and a bad thumb? But I didn't feel those in the fight, so you can't even use those as an excuse, even if I wanted to. And there's no excuses on the eye and the rib at the back. But it was he landed those shots. I was the one who's dealt with the cut, and I lost the fight, and that's that.
You mentioned there kind of feeling like you weren't able to do anything more. I mean, you threw over 800 punches in the fight. I think the general feeling after the fight was a very good fight. Everybody was very entertained by it. You also closed the fight very strong as well. Despite being behind, you kept forcing the action and pushing the action, which got you a lot of praise, both here and stateside. Does that mean anything after the fight, getting that praise, or is it kind of a little bit hollow, obviously not emerging victorious?
I think as time goes on, it's nice to hear, but all you can ever do is give everything in terms of what in the moment, and that's all I had in the moment. Obviously, looking back, I'm like, okay, I need to do this better, I need to do that better. But in the moment, I gave everything I could, and that's all I could do. But with hindsight, I would like to go back and do a lot of things different and stuff like that. But yeah, it's nice, but I kind of think you're a fighter. That's what you're paid to do. You're paid to give everything in there, and it's an entertainment business. People watch it because you're willing to go to that limit there is no limit of what you're willing to go to try and win a fight. That's what makes it so dangerous, but also so exciting to watch, and then so entertaining. So I think that's the way I am. Like I could have played a friendly kickabout in the garden with jumpers for goalposts as a kid, and I would have been giving everything. That's just who I am. It doesn't matter what I'm doing. I'm in any sport. I'm trying to win it. So regardless of how I feel. So that's it is nice to hear, and I'm glad people appreciate it. But that's just who I am.
There was a lovely moment at the end of the fight after the scores were announced where you gave Zurdo Ramirez your world title, your WBO title, which was well received and warmly received by those who watched the fight. Just explain that to me. It seemed obviously a bit spur of the moment thing, but a nice bit of show of respect at the end of a great fight.
Yeah, I don't know. I did it as an amateur actually. I lost my English. There was an English title series as amateurs, and we had these belts, and Chev Clark beat me for mine. I'd won it, and then I remember I said to the person who had the belt, I was like, can I give it to me and I'll put it on him, and he put it around. I put it around his waist and did it up, and I just don't know. It felt like the right thing to do. So on the night, I saw the WBO representative with the WBO belt, and I just said, can I give the belt to him, please? He beat me fair and square on the night, and that was that. So it felt like the right thing to do, and he very kindly gave me his robe actually in the ring, which is now somewhere in my house with my robe, which will end up going up, probably getting framed and stuff one day, when I can look back on my career one day and be proud of that moment and stuff like that. But when I saw it, opened my bag and saw it, it did give me it was a bit annoying to see. But I'd much rather there be another belt in there. But yeah, no, it's just something that I did as an amateur, and that was in the moment, and in the moment then I kind of remembered that, and I saw the belt and I thought I should be the one giving it to him. He's won that belt off of me, so I think that's just it's the right thing to do.
You mentioned there kind of Zurdo being tougher and being a little bit better than perhaps we thought going into the fight. How good do you think he is when you compare him to Jai Opetaia? Obviously, we're going to come on to talk about the situation, as it were, with the WBC title, but how do you rate him now after being in the ring with him? Obviously, a lot of the talk going into the fight was about him, being at light heavyweight. Came up short against Dimitri Bivol, which of course is no disgrace at all. Where do you rank him now, cruiserweight-wise, after sharing the ring with him?
Yeah, it's hard to rank him and rate him against Jai because I've never shared the ring with Jai. But I love that fight. It's a great fight as a fan. I still believe I've got the ability to beat them both. That's just the way we are, I think, as fighters, and I do genuinely believe that we'll run it back and I'll beat him. But he was fantastic on the night. I believe I can beat Jai still. Nothing changes in that sense because I know I can adapt. But yeah, it's a really interesting fight. But he's fought two cruiserweights, both world champions. He's beaten both. He's had 3 fights officially at cruiserweight. Joe Smith was coming up from light heavyweight. But yeah, I haven't, and I'm able to have, I've probably got better footwork than I showed in that fight. But me and Gulamirin have, in our fights with him, have had slower feet probably than him. So he's used his footwork quite well. Where Jai's got good footwork with good speed, but he's also probably a smaller cruiserweight, but with that a bit more speed maybe and a bit more movement. Also a southpaw. So yeah, it's an interesting fight. I don't know with Jai his win is he's looked good in his wins recently, but with his fights with Breedis, 2 fights Breedis and the fights in between, and obviously Jack Massey fight last time out. But the only world class cruiserweight I think he's boxed is Breedis. One was had a long layoff after the first fight, so at cruiserweight Zurdo's probably got the better resume in a way, albeit Gulamirin also had a long layoff. So yeah, it's an interesting fight, a really good fight with them two, and Zurdo I rate very highly as of now, as of the lay of the land. Them two are the number 1 and 2 cruiserweights in the division, and then yeah, obviously still I still believe I'm number 1, but I understand that I can't say that after a loss, so I'll have to stick myself at number 3. But I know I can still beat anyone in the world.
What did you make of the whole experience? Obviously, very much on away territory, even though Zurdo is not from Saudi Arabia, but it was very much Latino night over in Riyadh. What did you make of the whole experience? It seemed to be in a good place throughout fight week. Yeah,
it was in a really good place. I really enjoyed fight week as a team. I think we really enjoyed it. Our hotel was separate from everyone else's, and we all in there and had some fun and played plenty of Wolf, thanks to you, which is a great new game, which I'm sure will tear my family apart at Christmas. But yeah, no, it was good. It was a good week. All but fight night, really. the ring walk annoyed me a little bit. Little things like that annoy you when you look back. It's not an excuse for the fight. I've still started very well, and that would never affect me. But little things like just that fight night were obviously was the bad part, and the part that matters the most. But we had a good week, and it was a Latino night and everything. But the Latino and Mexican fans were very good. They were just there cheering for their man, and vice versa with a few of my fans on fight night. But the week was cool. It was a cool experience out there, and got looked after very well.
Now, obviously, looking at your handsome face there, it's going to be a little while before we see you back in the ring. But as is often the case in this crazy old sport, we're already talking about the next fight for yourself and, of course, for Zurdo Ramirez. WBC President Mauricio Sulaiman held court recently where he went through all of the weight classes, and obviously the cruiserweight division came up. Noel Mikhailian, Gavor, whatever you want to call him today or tomorrow, is still currently the WBC champion, but as I understand it, is away from the ring, having some issues outside of the ring. We've got Peralta against Rizicki, which is due on the 7th of December, so just a week or so away from the interim belt, week and a half away from the interim belt, which I think everybody expects the winner of that fight to be elevated to full champion. Mauricio Sulaiman has come out and said, he would be an honour, as Mauricio does, it's always an honour, an honour for Chris Billam-Smith to contest the WBC cruiserweight title. Do you think that's the most likely route for you when you do return to the ring? Yeah,
I think so. I think the other belts are all going to be tied up for now. Obviously, Zurdo's got WBA and WBO, and Opatai's got the IBF and the ring, and obviously he's fighting in January 8th, I think. He's got his mandatory in Sin Cara, which, if he can come through that's great. And then I imagine him and Zurdo will fight probably similar time to when I'll fight in May, maybe, and that's kind of what I'm looking at the moment is May time. Realistically, so I think the WBC route would be the route I'd love to go down, and obviously a very established belt, that green and gold belt, and really sort of sought after belt, and then gets me back at world level. And then, in an ideal world, I can fight for that at the same time they fight for their 3 belts, and then I can fight the winner. And these things can happen, and I believe that this will be the loss will be a big opportunity for me to just strip things back, work on some fundamentals which probably haven't worked on as much over the years, because really focus on my strength, and they've got me to where I am, but they weren't enough on fight night this time round, so I've got to go back and really polish up on some weaknesses, that'd be the route I'd take.
You mentioned there about learning from the defeat. Common knowledge and public knowledge about how much you felt that you learned from the Richard Riakporhe fight that you lost the first time around, obviously going on to avenge that earlier on this year. How does this loss feel in comparison to that loss? Obviously, completely different time, completely different stage of your career, but 2 losses in 2, at the time, what felt like a big fight. Not quite as big as the fight you had out in Riyadh, but how does it feel? Are they similar? Are they different?
The first Richard fight didn't feel like a loss, because I thought I'd won it. So, and a lot of people had thought I'd won it. I think online it was almost like 75% at the time were had thought I'd won the fight. So it never felt like a loss, and I thought I'll always get that back, and our names will always be intertwined because of how close a fight it was. But I got beaten on the night. I got convincingly. No one could say that I won that fight. Which is hard to take. So it's I then chuck in 5-6 hours in the hospital straight after it, and the whole night feels like an absolute disaster. So it's really, really hard to take. The feedback and stuff is nice, and I guess slightly softens the blow. But my nature and my personality is a winner and a champion, and for someone to there's no argument that he beat me, so that's really hard to take, and that's also what drives me on.
We spoke about it in the build up to the fight, and we've spoken about it ahead of your last 4 or 5 fights. I can't quite remember the exact dates. I don't mean to upset you. What was it like getting back to Frank, your son? Obviously a big source of inspiration for yourself. Came shortly before the Isaac Chamberlain fight, and obviously quite a lot has changed in your career and indeed your life since then. What was it like getting back to him?
Yeah, it was amazing. Amazing at first, and then, I was really excited, and then he was just like, didn't want to kiss me or hug me because my face looked a mess. He was like, "I don't like your ouchies, Daddy." And I was like, okay. And then I was driving him somewhere, maybe back from nursery or something the other day, and he was like, "Daddy, you win another belt?" And I was like, I could have cried in that moment. And I was like, no. And I tried to explain to him that I tried really hard, but I didn't. And he was like, "It's okay, you do it next time." And then he started going on, and then by this point I started recording the conversation because it was so funny. And I was like, one day I'll really cherish this conversation. And he was like, "When I'm a big boy, I'm going to do boxing gym." And I was like, okay. I was like, "No, you're not." But I can't tell him he's not at 2.5. And then he was like, "Daddy, you help me." And I was like, "If I have to." So, it's been amazing being back, especially now I've got the dressings off and he'll actually give me a kiss and a cuddle. And he doesn't mind my ouchies as much anymore. But yeah, it's been a great week or so being back with him and taking him to football. Took him to his first football game at the weekend, which, not sure if we take him to another one now because it was a loss, so it might be a bad omen. Because every time I've taken Mia, I think they've won. So Mia was there and he was too strong an omen, and we didn't get the win. But his first live football match, which was epic, and he loved the idea of seeing Cherry Bear, our mascot, until we got close to Cherry Bear, and Cherry Bear went to high five him and he almost cried. But yeah, it was a special occasion, and just trying to make as many memories with him as I can.
I wondered where you were going there when you said I tried to explain to him. I was like, surely you wouldn't explain to him the interim title situation in the WBC. Where I was like, surely even a 2.5-year-old's got no chance of understanding that. But we'll wait and see what plays out with that. As always is the case, somebody gets beat on the night and there's a queue of people queuing up to call them out. I mean, you've been called up by Jack Massey, you've been called up by kind of a who's who around British. Obviously, we're quite well stocked in the cruiserweight division, as you very well know, over on these shores. Any interest in a Jack Massey fight? I mean, I know there's some other names out there, Chev Clark, somebody who's well ranked, or is it kind of international/world level and above for yourself?
Yeah, I get it. Like, I'm, without, blowing my own trumpet, I'm still the best cruiserweight in the country and the biggest cruiserweight name because of can sell tickets, been in massive fights, always entertaining fights, etc. So for them, it's the biggest payday probably in terms of domestic fights, and it's a good name. But yeah, no, for me, it's got to be at world level. And yes, Jack boxed for a world title, but got comprehensively beaten. With a full camp, he have no excuses and stuff like that. So it's it'd be hard to drop down to that level motivation wise, to be honest. So yeah, I want to become world champion again, and those fights aren't going to get me there unless they're a final eliminator or or they win the title somehow. But yeah, so I think that's, I get it. Like, if they want to fight me, I'd probably be the same in their position, and was the same before when I was chasing other fights and kept winning and stuff. But I feel like domestically I've cleaned up, during this little period, and where we're at now, and that would feel like I'd be dropping down a level, to be honest. And I don't really want to do that. That's not where my motivation's at. I want to fight for world titles as soon as possible, and if that's not next fight, it's got to be like a world title eliminator.
Okay. Well, the last 2.5 years have been quite the ride for yourself. I mentioned obviously about Isaac Chamberlain. It came shortly after the birth of your son. You finally got a time now, which you've not from your own accord or your own desire to have a little bit of time out of the ring and to recover over Christmas. You're looking forward to that. Obviously, I know you're boxing mad, as most boxers are. Can't wait to get back in the gym, particularly when you feel that there's things that you could have worked on in your last fight, but also nice to have a little bit of a break now and reflect on the last couple of years.
Yeah. In a way, yeah. I wouldn't say I'm reflecting much on the last couple of years. I just looking forward to spending time with obviously my family, but very much looking forward to training again as of next week and start getting fit and stronger and do all that stuff before I can punch again. Obviously, I broke my left hand, so I'm not going to be able to punch on that for a while. not that the cast lasted very long; it was still my head in, so I ripped that off. But yeah, just looking forward to spending time with Frank and obviously my wife Mia. Got a nice little, few things planned with her, especially because we don't get a lot of time with just us two, especially during camp. It's like I'm coming home at weekends and want to maximise my time with Frank. And unfortunately, I'm probably not the best husband, especially during camp. So that's something I need to work on before I go back into camp, is make up for some of that lost time with Mia, Frank as well, but yeah, Mia especially.
We'll wait for the Mia Billam-Smith exclusive interview after this one. We'll wait for you to clear off. But yes, Chris Billam-Smith, the former WBO cruiserweight champion of the world. Sorry, I had to end it just as I began it. Thank you very much for speaking to Boxing News. Congratulations on what was a fantastic fight and a great performance, albeit coming up short in Riyadh. Before I let you go, I know there's a lot of people who were desperate to get over to Riyadh who unfortunately couldn't. Your travelling army of cherries weren't able to get over to the Middle East, but I'm sure are eagerly anticipating your return. What message have you got for them ahead of 2025?
Firstly, a shout out to everyone who did travel over. Couple of cherries were there, so yeah, massive thank you to them. I have thanked them anyway, but really appreciate it, and the support I've had since. But yeah, everyone else, thank you for your support, thank you for watching back home, and I look forward to seeing you all in 2025 for more big fights. Good nights.
There we have it. Chris Billam-Smith, thanks very much for speaking to Boxing News. I'm sure I'll catch up with you soon.
Nice one. Cheers, Rob.